Are you in a position where you can speak again, Margaret, or?
Margaret, can you hear us?
We
I
can
can
hear
hear
you, but
it.
While Margaret is getting her sound on, I'll just take a moment to introduce myself. I'm Katie Ellis with Ag Launch and working to help build out the programming with the Farmer Innovation Network. So we're really excited about today's uh, series. It's the last of 3 of these that we have hosted with Jackson and Kristin, and are really excited for the conversation that will follow. For those of you who are members of FIN, Ag Ventures Alliance, and the Ag Launch Farmers LLC, great to see you. Welcome and thank you. If you're not yet a member of FIN, we'd love for you to join the network. You'll have access to sessions like this, to other game time tactics sessions that really dig into how markets are built and look at interesting models that are working for farmers. So lots of good programming is coming up and opportunities to connect. With that, I'm hoping that Margaret's sound is working okay now, and that she can, I'll pass the baton on to her.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Good morning, everybody. I'm so excited to see you all. This meeting kind of came together as a result of farmer conversations. So I was at the AgVA annual meeting, talking to farmers about the southern leaf rust problems that some people had last year, had been in North Carolina, hearing about how, everybody's concerned about nitrogen supply, that the port was shut down, and this all these farmer conversations kind of coalesced in this understanding that this year was going to be really tough in many ways. Every year is different. Somebody said that earlier, like somebody said, we've got it planted, Brian. I think it was you, that we got it planted, but we don't know what else will happen. Will the river rise or whatever? Well, we do want to control what we can, and that's the farmer's nature, I think. So we thought that this conversation today about disease and fertility management would be really valuable to you all. These are 2 technologies that through the Ag Launch process we have seen work. So our Ag Launch farmers have been working with Kristin and Jackson for several years now, and we've seen the technologies really be beneficial to farmers in multiple ways. So we just really are grateful that you all are here. And our goal is to share a little information. We've got a couple of farmers here that have had some experience. We'll let them speak up here in just a moment, and then we will move on. But we're going to learn about diseases, disease management, disease detection, early detection, and how that can impact your crop. And with that, we've got Brian Ray with us here from Southeast Missouri, as he said, the Boot Hill area. We're really grateful, Brian, you're here. You've got a great story to tell. And also Kristin White with Spornado. And Kristin is the CEO there. She's just a phenomenal scientist and person who really wants to help farmers in the field. So we've got a lot to learn from her today as well. And then secondly, we've got Jackson Stansell with Sentinel online. He's the CEO, and he's got a pathway from Dothan to Harvard to Nebraska, and through all that has created quite a tool that can help farmers reduce their nitrogen or better manage nitrogen. I think when we heard Chad's example earlier this week, sometimes you may put a little more out, but you wind up with higher yields in a year when it's necessary. So excited to hear from him. I don't know if Chad's had a chance to join. Yep, I see Chad's popped on. So Chad Kroll will speak up in just a few minutes and share a little bit about his experience, and we will learn a lot about nitrogen management in a year where fertilizer prices are off the roof. So Chad, I don't know if you're able to come off screen or off mute. I wanted to check with you about your time. If you've got time to be on today, all day, or not all day, but all hour, or if you need to go first in terms of your sharing your experience.
I'll have to leave probably like 7:55. Can you hear me?
Can you all hear Chad?
Yeah.
Yes.
You can hear Chad. There's something going on with my system. Okay. So can you hear me?
Yes.
I just can't hear you. All right, so this is what we're going to do. I'm going to turn it over to Chad to tell his story first, I think, since I can't hear whether he's able to be on or not. I'm going to get on a different device, and I'll be right back. So, Chad, if you don't mind just sharing a little bit about your experience with Sentinel. And I know last time we had Jackson go first. I just don't know. Can you give me a thumbs up? Are you able to stay the full hour? Thumbs up.
I'll leave like 7:55.
He said 7:55.
Chad, if you just want to go ahead and tell your experience with Sentinel, and then we'll turn it over to Jackson.
Okay. So I farm in North Central Iowa. I met Jackson at the Ag Ventures annual meeting 3 years ago. I've been doing nitrogen trials since about 2010 on every field and just a bunch of different trials, and it was easy to implement those and do strip trials, but it wasn't really until after the fact, after the year was over, that you figured out whether you're doing stuff right. And it took a lot of years to really nail down some extremely variable fields. And so when I met Jackson, the strategy just seemed ideal, I guess, to be real time, making decisions instead of waiting until the end of the year to see if you're right. And so the first year I did it was in 24. That was an extremely wet year for us. And I don't know if we'll ever see a year like it again. We had pretty much any nitrogen that was applied before side dress was 100% leached out, completely gone. I had trials where I had 120 pounds with the planter and 30, and all of that nitrogen that was on with the planter was completely gone come grain fill time. So that was the year I had Sentinel, and I had my little plots out. So you do a lower rate nitrogen in some areas at a higher rate, and then using aerial imagery, you can visualize that and see those, especially those lower nitrogen plots, when they kind of start to turn and start looking more yellow and not as healthy. And so it recommended adding more nitrogen, and I did that once. I think I put another 30 or 40 pounds on. Kind of bought me another couple of weeks. We kept getting more and more rain. Recommended put another 30, 40 pounds out. I did that. Bought another couple of weeks. At this time, it's getting to be like VT, so we were at a tassel, and it's still recommending more. And I've already put on 60 or 70 pounds more than normal. This is corn on corn. Normally, I do like 180 pounds and an average 240 or something like around there. So usually can be pretty effective in nitrogen management. That year, nobody could be. And so it's right around VT, like I said. Put on another 30 or 40 pounds, and I'll set up the Y drop that year, tall crop. And so I do some soybean or some nitrogen trials for the Iowa Soybean Association as well. And so I have a bunch of different nitrogen plots through them. And so I started looking at around the rest of my fields, and everything was deficient. I was starting to get on the bottom 3-4 leaves were already firing pretty hard, before even grain fill started to happen. So kind of based on like Sentinel's information, which said I should have been, I've already added 60 or 80 pounds extra at this point. And those other nitrogen plots that I've had, I ended up Y dropping every single field that I had. And that 30, I think I put on about 30 to 45 pounds side dress Y drop at, I guess August 1st I started. Averaged right around 30 to 50 bushel return that year by adding that late nitrogen. And I just, everybody kind of thought I was crazy, and I kind of thought I was crazy, and I was sick of sitting in the sprayer all year. But I ended up at the end of the year, I ended up having one of my best crops I've ever had on average, and it really saved it. There was a lot of farms that had their worst average of all time. Even the farmers that have been around for 30, 40 years had some of the worst crops they've ever had. And it was all just from nitrogen loss. And it was a crazy year. And there was some field averages of 160, and then right next door, just by different management, different. And I even side dressed all my nitrogen that year, so it wasn't like it was all up front or even fall applied. It was all side dressed as well, and I still lost most of that side dress too. It was just relentless, and that rain kept coming. And I think part of the problem too is that year is we had such a small root system in our corn because it was the rain started so early. We never got to that deep nitrogen, or couldn't even try to recover some of that. Um, so it worked out really well. I never would have put that much on without that kind of telling me to keep going that far. Um, and then last year we had kind of a similar experience. It was pretty wet, but it started a little bit later, and it really worked. I normally you drop about 20 to 30 pounds of nitrogen, and then kind of save that for later if you're able to do that. So I dropped 20 or 30 pounds last year. I think I had 160 pounds of nitrogen on my corn on corn, and I never called for adding that additional, which I thought for sure we would have needed last year because we were extremely wet again. So, but it was correct. My highest ROI was at the 160, or maybe it was 170. I can't remember. And then it didn't need any additional nitrogen last year. So we didn't have great yields last year. They're pretty good, but the southern rust came in, and I was just a tiny bit late spraying in it, so it kind of took off the top end. But the question was my soil types. They vary from I got a couple sandier fields, which I call sandy, that most people probably wouldn't, but that have CECs around 8 or 10. They're pretty light. That's where the irrigation units are on. But also in those exact same fields, the corners are very heavy, very good ground, like 25 CCs, and on the Des Moines lobe, some deep soils. Most everything we have is tiled that needs it. There's some fields that don't have any, but they naturally drain pretty well. But there's not many of those. Most everything has some tile. But that year, in the wet year, it didn't really matter. There was some really good ground. A lot of organic matters of 4 to 5. We've been no-till and strip-till for 20 years or something like that, and it didn't really seem to matter what the field was. Even on some of my best ground, really good black dirt that's naturally well drained, all the nitrogen pretty much was gone that was applied side dresser before. I mean, all the planting nitrogen was gone 100%. The side dress nitrogen was, I think we lost about half of that. And so some of the guys that side dressed a lot, like 100% of their nitrogen, or maybe normally apply maybe a little bit more than they even should. Some of those guys kind of got by that year, but if you were applying kind of the correct rate, you were way short that year. So yeah, I've kind of seen it on both sides. It worked really well. The year where I applied way more than I ever thought I would, and the yields were, way better. And then last year I saved the nitrogen instead of putting it out extra and not needing it. I saved the 20 or 30 pounds. Inhibitors, I just use ATS. Most of that year was all liquid, with the planter, and then side dress liquid that year too. Sometimes I side dress anhydrous or urea. I've done just about every way.
Kat, it sounds like for you that each year is different, right? I think most farmers can identify with that, but you followed the Sentinel guidelines each time. And so I think it's probably time to hear from Jackson. Let him tell us more about what Sentinel is. And since you're able to be here, maybe we can continue with any questions, Chad. You mentioned Southern Leaf Rust, which is like a lob softball to Kristin, who's going to really share with us how to detect disease like Southern Leaf Rust early. But first, let's learn more about Sentinel. And hopefully, by hearing Chad describe his experience first, it wets your whistle to really hear how you too either might ensure yield in a year like 2024, actually both years. But the thing last year was about saving nitrogen, but one year you apply more. So Jackson, tell us how this can all work out.
Absolutely. And Chad, thank you for jumping on and just being willing to share your experience doing this. It makes things a lot more tangible, I think, than what I present sometimes. So I really appreciate you doing that. Um, and I'm honestly really glad to be on here this morning. I had a pitch contest yesterday, pitching to investors that don't know anything about ag, and it's awesome to be back in front of an audience that actually knows ag and does it every day. So um, I'm Jackson Stansell, founder and CEO at Sentinel Ag. We are based in Ithaca, Nebraska. We're a spin out of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, where I got my master's in agricultural engineering and worked on the technology behind the Sentinel platform. We have a second office down in Southeast Alabama, that is my hometown of Dothan. So we're kind of spread. We have farmers that we serve in 22 states around the U.S. We're also operating in two other countries right now. And we have certified service providers serving 11 states right now. So that's where we are in terms of scale. What we provide is the Sentinel platform, which, like Chad was saying, is primarily a nitrogen management decision support platform. We've also recently pulled in water management decision support as well. There are 4 tiers to the platform. Each one has a 12-month subscription for a per acre fee. And really, these tiers are geared to serve different needs, different production systems. Our Sentinel Standard tier is basically simplified nitrogen management for dryland row crops. Where this is best positioned is for folks that are making a single early side dress. It's very model intensive, and then folks that maybe want to monitor a little bit beyond that just to see how that's playing out. Our Sentinel irrigation tier is standalone irrigation insights for row crops. We see this most often used in soybeans where they're not nitrogen intensive, so nitrogen recs don't really matter, right? But this can help with irrigation management. We also have Sentinel Advanced, which is our advanced nitrogen management tier. This is all about when in-season management is the priority within an operation. So in corn, for example, if you're going to be applying side dress V6 and beyond, this is really the right tier for you to be in. And then Sentinel Complete is completely integrated nitrogen and water management. I'll get into more of what the capabilities are there, but it pulls in everything from our Sentinel Irrigation and Sentinel Advanced tiers into a single tier of the platform. As you can tell, based on the screen here, we use satellite imagery. We have prescription maps. We do a lot of integration of data. And some of the best things about our platform, we think, are that we don't operate off of a yield goal. We operate off of yield potential. I think Chad's story kind of speaks to that, as we're constantly trying to make sure that every nitrogen dollar spent is going to make its way into the plant and actually be utilized to build that yield potential. We provide daily insights and recommendations. This is really a good use of the platform, compared to tissue samples or something like that, where you may have a multi-day or even a week lag. This is providing really regular insights. We don't require any hardware or labor to make this work. It's really quick to set up fields in the platform, and you get data about your entire field at one time instead of just a single point in the field. Some of these specific capabilities that our platform enables are demand detection. So Chad's story speaks to that really directly, because what we were able to do is keep detecting that there was more demand for nitrogen in the field, that what had already been applied was not enough to keep up with crop needs. The way that we do this is we track nitrogen sufficiency based on satellite imagery over the course of the growing season. And really, this is built to help you make applications at the right time. We also have our All-In Advisor tool, which fuses together our image analytics, weather data, crop and management information, and then our proprietary modeling layer to provide rate recommendations for how much should go on the crop, whether that's a uniform amount to be applied to the whole field or a variable rate map to address site-specific differences in crop demand. Our HydroFlow insights enable a couple of additional capabilities. One of those is identifying risk. Leaching risk is obviously something that is very important, especially in the early part of the growing season. And what this particular part of our platform does is it remotely measures soil water content and can spatially detect where we have a high risk of nitrogen losses in the field. So whether that's informing scouting or whether that is just helping you to understand what is the potential that I have lost nitrogen in the field, that's a really, really interesting capability within the platform. And on those irrigated acres, managing moisture is really important. So the soil water content measurement and crop water use measurement across the field is really helpful for being able to get a complete field look at what might be needed to manage moisture for the crop. So some of the use cases that we've seen for this technology are obviously in-season applications, whether that's just helping with timing, whether that's helping with timing and rate, and then also the placement components. In-season applications is really what this platform is geared for. We've also seen farmers use this to make late season decisions. So for example, if they're planning to make a tassel application or post-tassel application, whether that's aerially or through fertigation, this system can be used to help you make a go or no-go decision on that last application and potentially save that nitrogen if it's not needed, or adjust the rate of it to make sure that you're meeting your yield potential. Application rescue justification is another piece here. We're starting to hear more and more from dairies with nutrient management plans, for example, that if they're coming up short on nitrogen as a result of how the season has progressed, this tool can justify an additional in-season application. And I think one of the most interesting use cases for this particular technology is managing risk of adopting new products or practices. We're hearing a lot about biologicals, biostimulants, alternative fertilizers, inhibitors, enhanced efficiency fertilizers, cover crops, manure. I mean, you name it. People are trying a lot of different things to try to make nitrogen more efficient on their farms. We've seen a lot of farmers pick this technology up and stack it on top of those technologies to ensure that they're getting what they're looking for out of that particular product, and they're not having to wait until yield to see how it impacted the crop. They can actually get in and intervene before that. So this addresses a lot of different crops that are important to rotations. Those are a list of some of the crops that we address and prioritize. We've seen very consistent results on this technology, especially in corn. We've been commercial for 4 growing seasons now, and across those 4 growing seasons, we've seen between a $27 and $40 per acre nitrogen savings. The technology has been used by some yield contest champions, particularly within the Class J or low nitrogen class. I need to get this updated because I saw that we actually had a couple more top 5 finishers last year, so that was great to see. So we're starting to rack up the top 5s here. And if you bring in how yield has changed versus expectation in addition to the nitrogen savings, we're looking at about a $59 per acre average profit change with everything included. So it's been really consistent performance, especially in corn. Just as a specific example of how this has played out for Cornhusker Farms, one of our customers over in Giltner, Nebraska, this is primarily on irrigated corn. They got started with us in 2022 on about half of their acres where they were adopting Pivot Bio and wanted to see whether or not it was working on their farm. They ended up liking what they saw out of our platform in terms of their ability to monitor and control risk with that product, and ended up adopting it across all of their irrigated acres in 2023. And we've consistently grown with them as they've continued to expand their farm over the last couple of years. They've seen a 277% ROI on the technology. And what this has really delivered is more confidence, more time back in their schedule, and ultimately that risk management that we've talked about so far. Implementing the platform is really pretty easy. The first step is adding a field boundary. Obviously, we just need to have that to digitally represent the field. We need to have a crop plan, so just an estimated planting date, maturity of the crop that's going in, seeding rate, and then also some information about your nitrogen management plan. So typically growth stages, rates, methods of application to help us just baseline the system. After that, you've got to choose a calibration method. Chad mentioned our Sentinel plots, which are these paired high and low nitrogen plots that go out in the field. These green plots are the high nitrogen, these red plots are the low nitrogen. We use this to basically calibrate satellite imagery over the course of the growing season. We still recommend that you use these because it helps us to isolate the impact of nitrogen on crop performance. But we do have a new technology that is plotless calibration, which uses modeling, imagery, and artificial intelligence to calibrate. And we've built this based on the data set that we've accumulated over the past 4 years. From there, you've just got to keep your planting and application information up to date in the platform. We have a really simple tool to add that in so that we can keep track of that. You'll receive notifications and recommendations, and ultimately it's just up to you to act decisively with the information that has been provided through the platform. Getting started is also pretty easy. You can create an account. I've got the URL there on the screen. You can follow that QR code as well to create an account. We do serve our farmer customers through what we call certified service providers. We have a century network of these that we've built. You can see the map there on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. We now have 55 of these certified service providers around the country. This has grown by 50% in the last 4 months. So we are starting to expand and be able to serve more customers. If you don't have one locally, we can serve you directly until we've got a CSP locally. So don't worry too much if you don't see one in your local geography. Then from there, it's just enrolling and implementing on your fields and growing using the recommendations and insights that are coming out of the platform. So that is Sentinel in a nutshell, but we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jackson. Feel free to come off mute if you'd like to just tell us your question or have that conversation, or if you prefer to chat that into the chat stream, you can do that as well, as Randy had been doing with some questions.
Good morning, Jackson. Randy McElroy. I appreciate the presentation. I'm a little curious. Define a customer service provider.
So what our certified service providers are, these are agronomists that provide in-season support, typically using technology to farms. So we work with anybody from seed dealers to independent crop consultants to precision ag services businesses to independent ag retailers. What's important to us is that they're focused on farm profitability. They care about resource stewardship, and they're working on those in-season decisions, because we don't really work very well with certified service providers that are only going to be doing planning. We're all about agility in season, and so that's really the best fit for us is folks that are prioritizing that.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Great.
Hey,
And are there any? Yeah, go ahead.
Jackson, Bob Recker here. Can you back up a couple slides? You had a slide that had nitrogen use efficiency.
Yes, sir.
And it looked like you had some pretty interesting numbers there. So are you using this tool to wait with application of nitrogen? Do you find people saying, okay, I have a tool now that'll tell me where I am and where I'm headed before I get there, so I can respond and start
Exactly.
out with a lower bar and then supplement if I need to?
Yes, that's exactly right. And for customers that are already doing in-season application, what we typically find is we're changing their timing, and we may even be changing the total number of applications. For customers that are used to applying most of their nitrogen up front, what we typically see in the first year is they'll monitor using the system, and then the next year they'll come back in and they'll lower their base rate, and then they'll hold off on applying more until they get in season. So what you're talking about is, I think, that exactly that strategy is this allows me to hold back. And once the system detects it, we've got about a week to get out there to correct. So we have some time to respond before it actually hurts the crop.
Thank you. That seems powerful.
Yes, sir.
Jackson, knowing Bob's context, do you have a minimum acres? And then does cover crop affect your satellite imagery?
So we do not have a minimum acres. And from the standpoint of cover crops, we actually think that's where satellite imagery is incredibly powerful. They're really hard to credit from a modeling perspective, in my opinion. And when you put these Sentinel plots out in the field, what we've seen two separate kind of use cases for this. Some people have put their Sentinel plots out while the cover crop is still growing, and you can actually see those Sentinel plots start to show up in the cover crop prior to termination. And that's where you really know that we better get some more nitrogen out there that's available to the crop, because it's going to take a while to get back out of the cover crop. Similarly, for folks that have terminated their cover crop and they put their Sentinel plots in, at or prior to planting, we've seen that move up a side dress application several times because we're not having enough nitrogen availability for the cash crop. but then we cut late season applications later as that mineralization is occurring, right? And the breakdown of the cover crop is occurring. So we think this is actually a really powerful tool for cover crops, in particular for tillage changes, for anything that you are doing that is hard to model.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jackson. If there are more questions, and I'm sure there are, please just text those in or chat those in. And for anybody that can stay on, we'll try to make sure we get those answered. But it's so important that we also talk about disease management. I know that many farmers in Iowa, the upper Midwest, really had some devastating results from southern leaf rust last year. And I think this is important too. Jackson works with many crops. We didn't talk about cotton today, but we spent a lot of time yesterday, Jackson and I, talking about cotton. But I wanted to point out one more tool that works on multiple crops is Spornado. So Kristine's here. I think we're all pretty focused on corn maybe, but multiple crops, Kristine, and maybe you share with us what Spornado is, and then Brian, with your experience in Southeast Missouri, I think it's a real powerful example. So, Kristine, why don't you start with what is Spornado, and then Brian, if you don't mind, we'll bring it around with you sharing your experience with it. If that's okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let me just share screen here. Thanks everybody for taking time today out of, I know it's a really busy time of year. You can see my screen okay? So yeah, I am the co-founder and CEO of Spornado. We're an early alert system for fungal disease based in Toronto, Ontario. So we got our start actually in potato way back in around 2017. And then from there, it's just kind of grown. We became an ag launch company back in 2021, where we got our first experience in corn and soy. And we're now in, oh gosh, a dozen different crops, and we have tests for around 30 different diseases. So I'll just go quickly through like how it works. It's a very simple air sampler that's powered by wind, and it has a small solar panel with a fan to draw in some air as well. And it holds this little disposable cassette that you just saw on the screen there, and that's what collects the fungal spores. It's couriered overnight to one of our partner labs. We have them across North America and internationally. And at the lab, it undergoes very highly sensitive, highly specific DNA analysis. And those results are sent back to the client within 24 hours of the lab receiving them, because we know that it's very important to have this information quickly, as you all know, because fungicides work their best when they're applied preventatively. So I mentioned that we're in a number of different crops and diseases. The nice thing is the same equipment and the cassette can be used for virtually any crop, or airborne fungal disease. We just have to change the lab test. And what we're finding, what we're getting feedback is that it's taking a lot of guesswork out of fungicide schedules. It depends on the disease, but we're seeing it in the air, 2 to 5 weeks before anything on the crop is scouted. And that enables growers to choose their application time more specifically. And then also it's being used just also to track disease patterns through the season. Kind of similar to Sentinel, we do see a lot of people, the first year using it to become familiar with it and track the trends in their area, and then in subsequent years start to take action when they know that it's an issue at different peaks in timing. Here's just one case study. This is in tar spot. So last summer we were finding spores as early as June 9th in the air. And then they were not scouted in a couple of areas for up to 5 weeks, July 17th, July 11th. And this allowed, some more targeted applications because they got that early warning. And actually, oh, this is the dashboard of our new portal. And this was actually at the recommendation and feedback of some egg launch growers. We used to just send an email, and that's how, Brian, you got yours. This is new this year. We would just send an email telling you you're positive for XYZ diseases with this many spores. Well, that's hard to envision over time, obviously. So as of this year, you're going to be able to just click a link and you'll be able to see all of your samples throughout the season, and you'll be able to track the patterns and the levels. And this example was actually the southern rust. That we got in Illinois. So as you can see here, we had a huge spike in June. And the funny thing about this is this was, I think, mid to northern Illinois, and actually the grower called us and they said, "Are you sure your test is working? Because we never get southern rust in our area." And so of course we go to the lab, we check, we do all the QC, and we're like, nope. And it was actually a number of sites. It wasn't just one. This is actually what's there. And lo and behold, that was, mid to late June. Come early to mid July, scouting reports started for southern rust. So again, this is an example where it's a disease that maybe isn't typical in certain areas, and it provided a warning that it was there this year. So it's very useful for these periodic diseases. The business model is pretty simple. We just quote for the whole year. You get your sample cassettes, you get all the analysis, and use of the sampler mountain pole for the year. And then some people even will do self-addressed prepaid envelopes to the lab just to make that easier to pop in the courier to send to one of our partner labs. And if the grower doesn't want to use it the next year, they just simply send back the sampler. And so what we've done is we have different disease panels because we can run, so we have pure corn panels, hybrid of corn and soy panels, or just soy. And yeah, we can detect up to 4 diseases off of a cassette. So that, in a nutshell, is what we're doing to help provide more data to put together a more data-backed spray plan.
I love that story, and I've just seen it work, Kristin. So I'm a huge fan. Let's hear from Brian, and because I think it does, as Jackson had said, make things tangible to hear from a farmer and their experience. And then you all, everybody on the call, if you've got questions, please feel free to chat those in the chat stream, or we'll open up for questions in just a moment too. But Brian, I know you had some, really a great experience with it in what could have been a really tough time with disease pressure. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yes, ma'am. Which Thomas was up, and we put it out at planting roughly April 25th, like I said, in Southeast Missouri. And usually we don't see any disease pressure in soybeans until I don't, everybody just sprays at R1 because that's what everybody does. Well, after we put it out, we was sending cartridges in, and we was relatively dry for the year in our area, but I believe there was another Spornado roughly 100 miles east of us in Kentucky. Our tests come back habitually low, extremely low, and theirs was coming back extremely high. But we was watching the weather, and it they was getting rains that we wouldn't, and they was getting a lot of rain, so the environment was a lot better for the spores and stuff. And we just kept running it, kept watching it, and finally, very late into seed field, we finally got a large weather system come through that dropped 4 or 5 inches of rain. And that's whenever we really saw the numbers go up and kind of get close to what we were seeing in the Kentucky location. But it was so low all throughout seed field that we knew we probably had several days, maybe a couple weeks until it started affecting it. So we held off on the application and saved us, I don't know, $30 to $50 probably. So it was a really big help for us.
So just being able to make a more informed decision because you were able to track how prevalent the disease was. Is that what
Yes,
that what
ma'am.
you experienced? Yeah. Okay. And Christine, I know there have been other times where farmers saw it earlier and made a decision to treat preventatively.
Yeah, absolutely. The use case works both ways. You know, it can trigger you to spray or in some cases hold off, but getting it on that good timing because, you only have a few weeks of coverage after that.
Yeah. And I know a few other farmers on the call here have had some experience with it. If anybody wants to speak up, and Mark, you've talked about this a couple of times, so you may or may not want to jump in today. But if you'd like to, please do.
Sure. I I guess we had the first experience with the southern rust last year. Uh, went about in August with our seed dealer and our agronomist to do some yield checks in fields with different varieties. And the varieties being that late around the 1st of August, we thought that the whole season for spraying was over. Was no need to spray. The crop was going to be fine. Yields looked to be record yields is what we were predicting. Agronomist was, we didn't see any rust in the field at that time. But when we got in the combine and started the first field, expecting, record yields, we had, I think that field went 175 bushel. Pretty disappointing. So we called our dealer, had the agronomist come up, and he said it was southern rust and came in real late in the season. We didn't know it. So if we would have had a Spornado out there, we would have caught that probably 2 to 3 weeks before it even could be starting to do the damage, and would have been a real good preventative thing to have. So I'm actually going to put one in this year to monitor our local crops. Just feel like it's worth it to be the preventer instead of the reactionary farmer.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Brian. Those real world examples really help put things into perspective. And like I said, I know, Christine, you started in potatoes, but now you're on multiple crops because people do see that value. Does Randy, did I see that you might have a question?
Yes, I had a couple, three questions. First, let me just make a brief comment. When you think of a pathogen like southern rust as a field scout, when you actually see the first of your pustules developing, you have significantly more infection in those plants that the human eye is not detecting. And if you're not used to something like southern rust as a crop scout, I could see how folks think we're okay when we're not okay. So, Mark, hey, you had to experience southern rust the way that you did. There's no fun in that. Brian, I'm curious. I didn't quite follow. Were you indicating that y'all never made a fungicide application on your soybeans because your spore counts remained low through a dry growing season, even though you had one significant weather event where there was the presence of spores as a higher count?
Yes, sir. But it was so late into grain field that we was the crop was actually starting to terminate itself, and we was maturing out. So we just never had to actually apply that year, or
All right.
we never did. We might should have, but we never did based on what we were seeing compared to the other Spornado counts.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Thank you for clarifying. And Christina, I had a quick question around comparisons. when you look at fields where y'all have had the early detections, have y'all done spraying, say 2/3 of the field or 3/4 of the field, left the untreated checks on the timings to help sort through the timing of the applications? Because someone mentioned, it might have been Brian, and it's a little bit of a challenging conversation. There's growth stages that some folks have got dialed in on to make applications of fungicides, independent of presence of pathogen in the field. I won't chase through that rabbit in detail. That's why I'm curious when y'all are making some of the yield comparisons, if you're setting up true side-by-sides in some fields to kind of capture that notes and the timing of where the growth stage of the crop is at and the impact that it has to the positive or negative.
Yeah, we have had a number of researchers do strip checks when we're out monitoring for them. But I think both of you, Brian and yourself, touched on something really important that it's not just obviously the spore count, it's weather dependent, highly weather dependent. We're just providing that one extra piece of the disease triangle that's not being available. So, and it's another toolbox for either growers or agronomists.
Christine, one question I saw there, you have your nice new chart and that, is that something all your members have access to? So you have like the Sentinel network built in, if Brian has it and Randy doesn't have it, you'll know that. So you kind of know where the disease is coming from and what direction it would be heading your way.
So right now it's just client specific, so the person subscribing will just get the information. I would encourage sharing. We see this, we have some really cool examples of that up here in Manitoba. Some growers put them out, some processors, some chem companies, and they all agreed to share the data amongst themselves for late blight. And that's something that like the Farmers Innovation Network could do. And because I think Brian gave that was a very good example of it's great to know what's going on in your property, but it's really good to know what's going on down the road. So I guess the short answer is right now, like it's just going to the person subscribed, but that's something that we would love perhaps next year to open it up to so you can in the system see whoever's agreed to share it with you. We do have retailers that are doing that. So Growmark, they put around 100 of them out last year, and the people that were on their FS agronomy, my agronomy system, they could see the Spornados across Illinois if they wanted to.
I think that fits perfectly with Mark is trying to put together, and if we as members can help encourage our service providers to try to help build that network. So thanks for that.
Awesome.
Yeah, Christine, that's something we should be talking about with
Yeah.
Mergent too, and on our data issues. That'd be great.
Okay, I'm going to shut off recording now. If you want to talk freely, we got the room for the rest of the day. So carry on.